Okay, so thanks everyone for coming along today. So this presentation provides an overview into the work that NatureScot are doing to support the Scottish Government's Marine Directorate in the upcoming consultation. And as Hannah said, the consultation aims to consult on management measures for fishing activity for marine protected areas and priority marine features, and this is within the inshore zone. So NatureScot's work is being led by my colleagues in the marine ecosystem team and myself. And if you do have any questions or you want to get in touch, please email us. So the email link is just down at the bottom. Or as Hannah said, we'll be at the MAS annual science meeting. So come chat to us then as well. So first of all, we just wanted to cover what the aims are for this meeting. So the first aim is to inform about the inshore management measures for fishing activity consultation. So this includes what it is, what it isn't, and the background to it. The second aim is to provide information on the process and NatureScot's advice. We also aim to provide information on where you can find out more, and there will be time for questions at the end and the opportunity to listen to your views. And we will be talking about the workshop and the stand at the MAS annual science meeting quite a lot, just to make sure everyone knows we're going to be there. It would be helpful if you could add what you hope to get out of the session in the chat. Just so we can see why people have come to the meeting and what your aims are for attending. Before we start, I think it would be helpful to explain what we actually mean by management measures. So in more simple terms, when we talk about management measures, we are talking about proposed restrictions to manage fishing in marine protected areas and areas around priority marine features. So I'm now going to pass on to my colleague Laura, who's going to give you a bit of context about the consultation and explain what marine protected areas and priority marine features are. And then Sarah will be popping on after to explain our advice and give some details around the proposed measures.
Hey there. So the slides I'm going to talk through are just giving you some context for the work. Next slide, Kelly. There we go. So Scotland has 233 marine protected areas for nature conservation. These include various different types of MPAs, including nature conservation MPAs, SACs, SPAs, which are mainly for birds, triple SIs, which are intertidal, Ramsar sites for wetlands, and also other effective conservation measures. So they're areas that have something in place that has a conservation benefit, but perhaps it wasn't put in place for that purpose necessarily. So management measures for fishing activity aren't in place from the point of MPA designation, and measures are being considered through this process for nature conservation MPAs, SACs and SPAs. It's important to note that MPAs are not no-take zones. They do allow sustainable use. They're also designated for specific features, species and habitats. So management considers the impacts of activities, including fishing, on those protected features. Scotland has also adopted a list of 81 priority marine features. These are a prioritised list of habitats and species of conservation importance, which help to focus action and to achieve our vision for sustaining Scotland's seas. Many PMFs are features characteristic of the Scottish marine environment. In 2017 to 2018, NatureScot identified the 11 most sensitive PMFs to bottom contacting mobile fishing, so that's trawling and dredging. These 11 most sensitive PMFs include habitats like merle beds, cold water coral reefs and flameshell beds. Management measures for fishing activity are being considered for key areas around those 11 most sensitive PMFs. So what we're talking about in this consultation is measures for MPAs, and specifically 3 types of MPAs, nature conservation MPAs, SACs and SPAs, and measures for the most sensitive PMFs outside those MPAs. So just a bit about the benefits of MPAs. So MPAs are an effective and internationally recognised tool 150 worldwide studies have found that MPAs which prohibit fishing have more invertebrates compared to fished areas outside of the MPAs. They're valuable in climate change mitigation and adaptation. They enhance carbon sequestration, they help with coastal protection and can increase the reproductive capacity of species. They also support sustainable fisheries, protecting nursery areas and increasing abundance. For example, studies have shown an increased abundance of scallops and lobsters at places including Skoma, Lundy Island and Lamlash Bay. And there's also been studies showing increased fish biomass, for example, in California. And they also enable recovery of protected features. So we have examples of that with flapper skate in the Loch Soon Sound of Jura MPA and also flame shell beds in Loch Carron MPA. In terms of the legislative requirement for management, under the habitats regulations, which was formerly the Habitats and Birds Directives, for SACs and SPAs, we have a responsibility to ensure that species and habitats are maintained or restored to a favourable conservation status. Under the Marine Scotland Act, we have a responsibility to ensure that activities like fishing don't hinder the conservation objectives of nature conservation MPAs. And then we also have General Policy 9B of Scotland's National Marine Plan, which directs that activities shouldn't result in significant impact on the national status of PMFs. So what protection do MPAs and PMFs already have? MPAs and PMFs are considered by public authorities through the licensing and consenting process. Developments such as energy developments and aquaculture are all assessed to consider whether they will have an impact on the features of MPAs and on PMFs. For fishing, the management measures for the offshore sites were announced on the 1st of September and came into effect in October. For the inshore zone, some MPAs have had management in place since 2016, and this consultation is on the remaining MPAs along with the PMF areas, and it's expected to start at the end of this year. So just quickly to cover the roles and responsibilities for this work, the consultation's run by the Scottish Government's Marine Directorate, who are the regulator for fisheries. NatureScot's role is to set the conservation objectives for MPAs and to provide the Marine Directorate with advice on how to meet those conservation objectives, and also advice on activities that might pose a risk to the national status of PMFs. The Marine Directorate draft the management measures based on our advice. They carry out the impact assessments and they run the consultation. The final decision on the measures and the implementation of the measures is made by Scottish ministers. And I will hand you over to Sarah Cunningham, who's going to tell you a bit more about our advice.
Thanks, Laura. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about our advice now. So, introduce you a little bit more to the measures themselves. So, basically, when we are developing our advice in terms of the management of MPAs, we consider two key things to look at risk. So we're looking at the evidence on the sensitivity of protected features to pressures that are caused by activities, along with the features level of exposure. So basically the amount that they overlap with the pressures caused by activities. And by looking at those two things, we make a judgment around the risk to achieving the conservation objectives of the marine protected areas. So the evidence that we used and we base our advice on includes scientific papers that are published by have been published by some people from the master community and from elsewhere, but also research reports that ourselves, Marine Directorate and others have commissioned, as well as our own survey data. And using bringing those things together, we provide our advice in three main categories. So no additional management, basically where there may be sensitivity, but there's basically no exposure to that activity. A management to reduce or limit pressures, so that may be where we've got some sensitivity and some overlap, and remove or avoid pressures where we've got maybe features with higher sensitivity or quite a degree of overlap with activities. And that is the key around our advice. Sorry, next slide, please. So what information and evidence do we use? So we are, for habitats, we use things like obviously the extent and distribution of that habitat. We're also pulling on the density, things like the associated fauna and flora. And a lot of that information is contained within our geodatabase of marine features called GEMS, which is available to download from the NatureScot website. We also, for species, we use things like population estimates, breeding success, and also consider the prey, particularly of mobile species, and the supporting habitats. In terms of the interactions and sensitivity, that information is captured within FEAST, which is the feature activity sensitivity tool that we have for Scotland, and it's got a separate web page that you can access. We'll provide the links for that. And that's drawing on information from the scientific literature, the grey literature, and also expert knowledge. And finally, we use information from stakeholders too. So where that's provided maybe from marine industries through applications, citizen scientists going out and doing dive surveys, drop-down video, through public consultations like the one that we're going to be involved in and we're talking to you about, and also through individual discussions with particular stakeholders. Sorry, next slide, please. So we provide our advice in lots of different ways, and we've got sort of different documents available, and we'll have available for the consultation that provide this. So our key document for our marine protected areas is our conservation and management advice documents, and there's one of these for each of the MPAs. They provide information on the conservation objectives of the site. There's quite a lot of detailed information in there, but also our advice on activities, including fishing. We have our priority marine feature advice documents. So these are produced for the 11 documents, provide a bit more information on the PMFs, but also the kind of key locations that we've advised need protection. And we have fisheries guidance notes as well, which outline kind of where the interactions are between the various fishing gears that are being considered as part of the consultation and protected features and PMFs, and also various bits of supplementary guidance as well. So additional advice that we've provided into Marine Directorate to support their decision-making process. So a little bit more now about the actual proposed management measures themselves. If you want to go on to the next slide. So as Kelly summarised at the top, so there are two types of measures being considered, those being proposed to manage fishing activities in MPAs that are not already managed through the existing regulatory systems, and they cover a range of different fishing activity types, and also proposed restrictions to manage fishing activity in relation to the 11 most sensitive PMFs, but that is specifically for those that are most sensitive to trawling and dredging. So as we've touched on already, just to reinforce, the MPA measures are being considered for these 3 different designation types. They aim to manage the pressures on protected features and ensure conservation objectives can be met while still allowing sustainable use. So the consultation options will include, for most sites, a zoned option and a full exclusion of specific fishing gear types that have the potential to affect those protected features. So they may be over defined areas, but also they may be seasonal depending on the feature being considered. And there's a range of fishing gears being considered as part of those restrictions. So things like dredging and trawling, but also static nets. So things like gill nets, tangle nets, and long lining. And those latter types of fishing gears are more relevant for particularly some of our mobile species, like our birds in our SPAs. But creeling, measures for creeling aren't being considered as part of this consultation. For the PMF measures, again, so they're aiming to prevent significant impact on the national status of the 11 most sensitive PMFs. That's a requirement from the National Marine Plan, as Laura touched on. The PMFs are only focusing on bottom contact in mobile gear. And again, the consultation will include 2 options, mostly for one site. One option, and I'll show you an example in a minute, is slightly larger, a bit more precautionary, and the other one a bit more refined. But both options we feel meet the requirements of the National Marine Plan. So having a look at this example here, Bay of Swartmill. So the PMF management areas, I don't know if anyone's had a chance to have a look yet, but they have been released early by Marine Directorate, just because we're aware there's a huge amount coming within this consultation to give people early sight of those. So we've just got a couple of examples here just to show you what they look like, and talk a little bit through what you might see when you go and have an explore of some of them. And Kelly's going to show you in a minute how to find those. This was one of the PMF management areas that was initially proposed back in 2018 when the first consultation on these areas was done. But since then, some boundaries for PMF areas have been changed, some have been extended, some have been refined, some have been dropped, and also new areas have been added. And this is based on the data that we have in terms of the PMFs around the coast of Scotland, but also Marine Directorate have taken on board fisheries plotter data and made refinements where it's possible without impacting what we know about the distribution of the feature. For example, this Bay of Swartmill is a proposed management area. It's a new area from 2018, and the area was proposed following the discovery of Merle in 2019. Have the next example, please. Thank you. So for this example here, Inchmarnock. As I said, most places there are two options proposed. So option one is a smaller area, so that's the hatched area on this map, and is again an area that meets the policy requirements in the National Marine Plan, and the boundaries have been refined based on the biodiversity data that we have on the PMF, but also the fisheries activity data too. Option two is a slightly bigger area that presents a more precautionary option, and obviously would be an area where more fishing activity would be restricted. So yeah, just a couple of examples there for you to have a look at, but yeah, obviously you can go and have a look at those in a bit more detail. Thanks, Kelly. So as I mentioned, the measures have been released. They're available on National Marine Plan Interactive, and we'll put a link in for that. The MPA, we are also developing, and we'll have on the NatureScot website, a little interactive tool, a GIS tool that's a bit more hopefully user-friendly, doesn't have quite all the layers that National Marine Plan Interactive has, for those of you that are aware of it. And hopefully, yeah, is you can see the proposed areas alongside the biodiversity data. It currently just has the PMF areas on it because that's all that's been released, but once the MPA measures are released, they will be added too. So I think Kelly's maybe going to give a little demonstration at this point or at the end.
I'll give it at the end just so that I'm not having to reshare.
That's fine.
Cool, thanks, Sarah.
I'll pass over to Kelly.
Thank you. So I'm going to be talking about the consultation process itself. So first of all, we wanted to give a bit of background. How have stakeholders been engaged in the management measures process so far? So the process of designating MPAs and developing management measures has been really long running. So the first phase of fisheries management measures for the MPAs most at risk from fishing activities was consulted on by Scottish Government in 2014. And as we've said, yeah, they kind of came into effect from 2016. So that's over a decade ago. Since then, further consultations have taken place. So there was a consultation in 2018, which consulted on improving protection given to PMFs outside the MPA network. And then there was another consultation in 2024, which was on offshore MPA management measures. Both the Marine Directorate and ourselves, NatureScot, have engaged with the fishing industry, communities, and local decision makers throughout this decade-long process. So for example, as Sarah's mentioned, through conversations with fishers, we have been able to use their plotter data to inform our advice for managing MPA activities. Most recently, we've really been kind of gearing everyone up and preparing them for the consultation. So we've been giving briefings to key sector representatives, and we will be joining Marine Directorate-led engagement events in the lead up to the consultation. So yeah, just getting ready to go. So what will the consultation look like? The consultation will be an extended 16-week consultation, and it's expected to start late 2025. You will be able to access it on Citizen Space, and there will be questions around proposed measures, so that will be specific areas, but also around the approach in general. Questions will be also available in English and Gaelic. After the consultation, there will be a consultation report, which the Minister will consider. And the consultation is ultimately the chance for you to give your views about how Scotland manages fishing activity within MPAs and in areas around PMFs. So if you're interested in this, please do respond. There's going to be a series of events running throughout the consultation period. So what will these events look like? There's going to be in-person events all across Scotland. So I think we've got 22 plus planned at the moment, so a really big scope. There's also going to be in-person briefings for key sector representatives and online sessions and briefings. So with the online sessions, they're going to be a mix of sector-specific and topic-specific. And if there's anything you would like the events to include, please answer in the chat or get in touch with us through the email or at masts. Alongside the consultation, Marine Directorate are developing a mitigation process to support the most severely impacted fishers. This means supporting people to transition their fishing practices through diversification and funding, and Marine Directorate are working with fishing associations to design what this process should look like. So I appreciate in the last 20 minutes, we have given you like so much information. Yeah, there's a lot to take in. So where can you find out more? We'll share a link in the chat to our web pages. So NatureScot's webpage will include things like frequently asked questions, more details about the advice that we've provided regarding the PMFs, but also the MPAs. There is also links to conservation and management advice documents and site link, which I'll show you in a second. And as Sarah mentioned, we are developing an interactive web tool. And this is just going to be to show everything, I guess, that you will need to support how you engage with the consultation. So an NPI has so many different layers, and it can be, yeah, a lot to try and figure out what you need to be looking at. So this interactive web tool will just be a little bit more, hopefully easier to navigate. Once Marine Directorate's web pages are launched, they will have links to the measures, assessments, and also the consultation platform. And yeah, I will show you where the measures are on NMPI in a second. We also just wanted to highlight opportunities for the masts community around the upcoming consultation and the proposed measures. So firstly, there are research opportunities here to investigate the effectiveness of measures and what happens to species and habitats when pressures are removed or reduced. So in some cases, there are zonal approaches, and that means that pressure reduction could be explored along a gradient of pressures. Secondly, the proposed measures have been informed by a range of data sources. So we've got our own NatureScot surveys to data from both citizen science as well as academia. And as we've mentioned, the data on the distribution of habitats and species does play a really essential role in understanding like where the features are and overlaps with fishing activity. So if you do have a look at the proposed areas and you have data that isn't included currently on an MPI, please do get in touch because this data could really feed into the consultation. And for both the research opportunities and for the data and information provision, we can share a list of MPAs that will be considered in the upcoming consultation if that is useful, because we're aware that they've not been published yet on an MPI. And yeah, just to say again, please do respond to the consultation if you're interested. So if you have an interest in this topic, responding to the consultation really allows you to influence policy and decision making, and ultimately getting feedback from a range of stakeholders is important as it ensures that a wide range of perspectives are considered moving forward. And finally, as Hannah has mentioned at the start, we will be at MASTS at the annual science meeting. So we have a stand for both the Tuesday and the Wednesday. So if you want to come and speak to us about any questions, anything really specific, or you just like to discuss the management measures, please do come along. And we're also hosting a workshop on the Tuesday afternoon between 2 and 4. So this workshop aims to increase awareness and understanding of the upcoming consultation, gain a better understanding of the perspectives of the maths community, but also stimulate thinking about research opportunities around the proposed measures. So yeah, we're really looking forward to holding a workshop and spending a bit of time on this. And lastly, please do get in touch with us. Here's our email below and the link to the website, which we can post in the chat too. But if there's anything else you need from us to engage in the consultation process, please get in touch. So as we've highlighted, we're not leading on the consultation. That is Scottish Government, but we can try and provide whatever is in our gift. And key things to remember. So if you're going to take anything out of the presentation today, it's these key bullets. So first of all, the proposed measures apply to fishing. Other activities, so for example, fish farms, ports and harbours, are already covered through licensing and consenting. There is a legal and policy requirement for these measures, as well as ecological benefits. There has been a decade-long lead-in time for this consultation, and there has been a lot of engagement already with directly affected people. MPAs are multi-use, and they do allow activities that do not impact the conservation objectives to take place. The consultation is a chance for you to share your views, and I'll say it again, if you do have any questions, please get in touch.